A dramatic announcement came from the White House offering a sliver of hope in a region teetering on the brink of a much wider conflict. United States President Donald Trump declared that a complete and total ceasefire had been reached between Israel and Iran. He called the recent intense period of fighting the 12-day war, a name that immediately caught the world's attention. The announcement was made with his characteristic boldness, promising an end to the escalating violence that had gripped the Middle East. The world watched, holding its breath, wondering if this unexpected diplomatic breakthrough could truly hold and bring much-needed relief to the people living under the constant threat of attack. The ceasefire was designed with a unique phased approach intended to build confidence between the two deeply entrenched adversaries. According to the plan detailed by the White House, Iran was to halt all hostile actions first, beginning a 12-hour period of quiet. Following this, Israel would then observe its own 12-hour cessation of military operations, completing a full 24-hour cycle of de-escalation. This step-by-step process was meant to prevent any misunderstandings and allow both sides to verify compliance before fully committing. The goal was to create a small window of trust, a foundation upon which a more permanent peace could potentially be built in the future. The background of this sudden truce is a conflict that had been simmering for years, only to erupt into direct open warfare over 12 harrowing days. Tensions escalated after an Iranian missile attack targeted the Al Udeid airbase in Qatar, a facility that hosts American forces. This act was seen as a major provocation, leading to a swift and powerful Israeli response. The ensuing days saw a cycle of retaliatory strikes, with both nations demonstrating their military capabilities and their willingness to use them. The fighting created a humanitarian crisis, and raised fears of a regional conflagration that could draw in other global powers, making the need for a ceasefire critically urgent for international stability. Despite the celebratory tone of President Trump's announcement, many seasoned observers immediately pointed to the lack of specific details. Analysts like Omar Rahman noted that crucial information was missing from the initial statement. It was unclear what verification mechanisms were in place, what the long-term objectives were beyond stopping the immediate fighting, or what consequences would follow if the agreement was violated. The Israeli government confirmed its agreement, stating that the objectives of its military operation had been achieved. This statement suggested that Israel felt it had gained an upper hand, a position that might not be conducive to a truly balanced and lasting peace agreement. The fragile hope for peace was shattered almost as soon as it was born. Before the ink on the agreement was metaphorically dry, accusations of a breach echoed across the region. The Israeli government reported that volleys of missiles had been fired from Iranian territory, striking the southern Israeli city of Beersheba. These attacks reportedly caused casualties, with at least 4 people killed. The timing of the alleged strike was critical, as it appeared to happen after the ceasefire was supposed to have commenced. This development immediately cast a dark shadow over the entire peace effort, suggesting that the path to de-escalation would be fraught with immediate and dangerous challenges. In a swift and decisive response, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz announced that he had ordered the military to conduct new strikes on Tehran. He framed this action as a direct retaliation for what he explicitly called a blatant violation of the ceasefire by Iran. This order for intense strikes signified a rapid and severe escalation, moving from a tentative truce back to open warfare in a matter of hours. The Israeli leadership's message was clear: any breach of the agreement would be met with overwhelming force. Their position was that they were acting defensively, responding to an act of aggression that undermined the internationally brokered halt in fighting. Iran, however, presented a completely different version of events. Iranian officials vehemently denied launching any missiles into Israel after the ceasefire was meant to take effect. They countered with their own accusations, claiming that it was Israel that had continued its attacks beyond the agreed-upon start time. Furthermore, some Iranian state media outlets and officials rejected the premise of the ceasefire altogether. Iran's foreign minister stated that while a ceasefire was in effect, there had been no formal agreement signed. Other officials claimed they had never received any formal ceasefire proposal, dismissing the announcements from Washington and Jerusalem as a form of deception. This clash of narratives created a whirlwind of confusion and mistrust, making it nearly impossible for the international community to determine the exact sequence of events. Was it a deliberate Iranian attack, a rogue action, or a misunderstanding? Or was the Israeli claim a pretext to continue its military campaign? Both sides confirmed their agreement to the ceasefire in principle, yet their actions and statements were in direct contradiction. This, he said, she said, dynamic is typical of the deep-seated animosity between the two nations, where every action is viewed through a lens of suspicion and historical grievance, making genuine peace incredibly difficult to achieve. For ordinary citizens in both Israel and Iran, the 12 days of war had been a period of intense fear and disruption. In Israel, the constant threat of missile attacks had become a grim reality. Families in cities like Beersheba had grown accustomed to the wail of air raid sirens, forcing them to rush to bomb shelters at a moment's notice. The news of a ceasefire had brought a brief, collective sigh of relief. People hoped for a return to normalcy, for children to go back to school without fear, and for the constant anxiety to subside. The initial announcement was met with cautious optimism, a desperate desire to believe that the violence was finally over. When news broke of the alleged ceasefire violation and the new missile attacks, that fragile hope quickly turned to a mixture of anger, fear, and resignation. The reported deaths in Beersheba sent a shockwave of grief and outrage through Israeli society. For many, it confirmed their belief that Iran could not be trusted, and that a strong military posture was the only way to ensure their safety. The call for retaliatory strikes from their government was met with widespread support. The emotional whiplash from hope to despair left many feeling that a lasting peace was an impossible dream, a sentiment born from decades of unresolved conflict and recurring violence. Across the border in Iran, the population was also bearing the heavy cost of the conflict. While their government's official statements projected strength and defiance, the people on the street were grappling with the consequences of war and international isolation. The Israeli airstrikes had caused damage and instilled fear in Iranian cities. The news of a ceasefire was viewed with a deep sense of skepticism, colored by years of mistrust towards the United States and Israel. Many Iranians saw the announcement as a political maneuver by President Trump, rather than a genuine effort for peace, a view amplified by their own state media, which called it a deception. The reports of new Israeli strikes on Tehran were met with a combination of defiance and weary exhaustion. For many ordinary Iranians, the conflict exacerbated the economic hardships they were already facing due to international sanctions. While national pride and support for their country's defense are strong, there is also a deep yearning for stability and an end to the cycle of violence. The back-and-forth accusations and the quick collapse of the truce reinforced a sense of helplessness. People in Iran, much like their counterparts in Israel, felt like pawns in a larger geopolitical game, their lives and safety hanging in the balance of decisions made by leaders far away. The primary purpose of the ceasefire, beyond simply stopping the immediate bloodshed, was to pull both nations back from a catastrophic precipice. The 12-day war had demonstrated how quickly a long-standing shadow war could erupt into direct state-on-state conventional conflict. The international community, led by the United States, hoped that a pause in hostilities would create a crucial diplomatic opening. This break was intended to allow for negotiations, however indirect, to begin. The goal was to de-escalate the situation and prevent a full-scale regional war that could destabilize the entire Middle East, disrupt global energy supplies, and draw in other world powers. A successful and durable ceasefire is of paramount importance for the people living in the region. For civilians in both Israel and Iran, it means the difference between life and death, between nights spent in fear and the simple security of being safe in their own homes. A lasting peace would allow communities to rebuild, economies to recover, and a generation of children to grow up without the psychological scars of war. It would mean an end to the sirens, the explosions, and the constant gnawing anxiety that accompanies living in a conflict zone. The human cost of this conflict is measured not just in casualties, but in the daily toll on mental health and societal well-being. The rapid breakdown of this particular ceasefire effort serves as a stark reminder of the immense challenges that lie ahead. The deep-seated animosity, historical grievances, and profound lack of trust between Israel and Iran are formidable obstacles to any peace process. Each side views the other's actions through a prism of suspicion, making it incredibly difficult to verify claims or build the confidence needed for genuine de-escalation. The conflicting reports and immediate return to hostilities show that a simple announcement is not enough. A real peace will require sustained diplomatic engagement, robust verification mechanisms, and a willingness from both sides to step back from the brink. Ultimately, the quest for a ceasefire between Israel and Iran is about more than just geopolitics. It is about human security. The safety of millions of people is at stake. While this attempt may have faltered, the urgent need for a peaceful resolution remains. The international community must not be deterred by this failure but should instead redouble its efforts to facilitate dialogue and find a sustainable path away from conflict. The alternative is a continued cycle of violence that promises only more destruction, more grief, and more instability for a region that has already endured far too much suffering. The stakes are simply too high to abandon the pursuit of peace.